Now they can hear me at home. Welcome to July's Planning Committee, Development Management Committee for Hart District Council. Apologies that it's on the same night as the semi-final, but when these meetings were set up a year ago, we had no anticipation of reaching that far in the tournament. Okay. Right. Just to start us off, could the lead officer just do the fire evacuation procedures, please?
Thank you, Chair. So there's no planned evacuation for tonight. So if you hear the alarm, it's the genuine article. Please leave the building at once by the nearest available exit, and they're marked with a green arrow that will light up. Do not use the lifts. If anyone present has difficulty in negotiating the stairs, please make yourself known to the committee services officer here, and we will escort you to the most appropriate location. And when clear of the building, please assemble on the views, which is the green area behind this building, and do not re-enter the building, please, until told to do so by the officer in charge. So it just remains for me to say, please, could you silence your mobile phones if you have one with you? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Berry. I'd just like to remind people that this meeting will be recorded and that anyone remaining at the meeting has deemed to have consented to any such recording. So if you're not happy with that, I'm afraid you'll have to leave. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Alan Oliver. I'm the chairman of the Development Management Committee. The ladies and gentlemen that you see arranged in the horseshoe are members of the Planning Committee, and they represent the wards of a Hart District Council. What I will do is to get officers to introduce themselves, because we have members of the public here tonight, so you know their particular roles and what they're doing here, as well as the Development Management Committee itself. So if I could just start with yourself.
Thank you, Chair. James Kidger, Principal Planner. I'll be presenting both of the applications tonight.
And I'm Mark Berry. I'm the Development Manager here at Hart.
I'm Kathy Long, and I'm from Committee Services taking the minutes this evening.
And I'm Sarah McCann, Principal Planning Lawyer, Shared Legal Services.
Right. Thank you, everyone. I hope that's clear to our public present. First of all, agenda item 1, the minutes of the previous meeting. I'd just like to point out, if you look at your addendum, we've had to slightly amend the minutes from last time to ensure that we get a report back to this committee before it goes to council on the proposal we agreed to change the enforcement subcommittee to an enforcement working group. Lead officers in this council thought it best if we looked at the constitutional changes prior to them going direct to council. So we will have a short report next time just to outline those. So we had to make that clear in the minutes. That was what our process would be. So I hope that's acceptable to members. So apart from that, are there any matters of clarification on the minutes that members want to bring up? So could I have a proposer for that? Proposed Councillor Southern, seconded by Councillor Quarterman. All those in favour of me signing the minutes? Of those here? Okay, any against? No, so I'll sign the minutes of the last meeting. Right. So do we have any apologies this evening?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Radley, and he is being substituted by Councillor Butler here.
Okay. Councillor Dawn.
Chairman, yeah, Councillor Forster has contacted me to say his train has been delayed and he's been moved on to a different one, so unlikely to get here for the next hour.
Okay, thank you. No other apologies? I think nobody else missing, is there? No. Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on. Anybody got any declaration of interests on the matters we're going to discuss tonight? Councillor Smith. I was going to call you Dermot, but Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just to declare a declaration of interest in item 6 on the agenda, only because the location of the application is close to my own property. It's not within sight, has numerous properties in between. I don't know the applicant other than through their previous applications on the site, which I'll cover. I have no pecuniary or prejudicial interest at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a note of that. And no other declarations? Right, as usual, if something crops up during the meeting and you suddenly realise you should have disclosed something, please do so. Okay? Okay, just by raising your hand and giving me a shout. Thank you. Right, chair's announcements. I don't think I'm going to make any announcements tonight in the thought of us actually concluding business reasonably. Okay, and then we move to the main items on the agenda, which is 2 development applications we're going to hopefully decide on this evening. And I'll call on item 6, which is the Zenus Reading Road Hook application 02132. Who is going to present that to ourselves? Mr. Kidger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just bring up the presentation. Yeah.
We not don't get it on that one as well, do we? No.
Got it on.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the public one. It's
I don't know.
that looks like an IT failure, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So agenda item 6, Zenus Reading Road at Hook. This is a hybrid application for 2 dwellings. So hybrid being one of those dwellings is for full planning permission, and the second is for outline permission. And for that second one, we are considering principle and scale. The location plan of the site, with the site boundary edged in red, so off the Reading Road and north of Great Sheldon's Coppice. And on the right hand side there, you can see the Dorchester Stream labelled, which is one of the main issues in this application. Next, we've got an extract from the Environment Agency's flood map for planning. The black line is showing you the Dorchester Stream, which is classed as a main river. It is culverted under the roads, but the section just to the southeast of the site is open. This is a Google aerial shot of the site. Again, same area as before. You can see the buildings with the green roofs are 2 of the existing buildings on the site, and the building sort of to the north of those 2, surrounded by the green square almost, is the 3rd building. And that hedgerow south of that building is no longer on the site. This is the proposed site plan. The application for full permission, or the dwelling for full permission, is the one at the bottom, the south dwelling. And that would also have a garage sort of to its north west. And then the dwelling for outline permission is at the north side. That is indicative. It wouldn't get any bigger than that because we are considering scale. The layout might change slightly at reserve matters. The access on the right hand side there in the dark grey is unchanged from the existing position. And the second access to the south onto Great Sheldon's Coppice, the applicant already benefits from a consent from the Highway Authority for that crossover. These are the proposed elevations for the dwelling for which full permission is sought. You can see that it's slightly raised. That is because of the flood risk element from that adjacent main river. So it does have a ramped access on one side and stairs on the other. And then what look like very small windows at the bottom are actually voids underneath the property, so that flood waters could flow in there relatively unimpeded. These are the proposed floor plans for that house. You can see on the right hand side that 3 of the windows are labelled to be obscurely glazed, and that would be secured by condition. This is the proposed garage, and it would be open, so it would be a floodable structure in the event of a flood on the site. This is the proposed street scene from Great Sheldon's Coppice, and you can just see there the property to the left, which I believe is the orchard. That's the ridge heights are similar. So although the proposed dwelling is raised slightly due to the flood risk, it wouldn't be any higher than the adjacent property. As photographs now, this is the site from the Reading Road, the main building in the foreground there. This is from Great Sheldon's Coppice, looking west. The Orchard is the house in the foreground, and on the right-hand side is one of the buildings on the site. Just panning slightly to the right, both of the main buildings there on the site you can see in the foreground. Again, panning right, you see where the red brick structures are, just on the right-hand side there. That is the open section of the Dorchester Stream. And that is a close-up view, and you can just see the water at the bottom there of that ditch. So the red brick section at the top of that image, on the right of it, you can see the culvert which goes under the Reading Road. That is the flow of the river. This is a shot from the Reading Road looking down onto the site. You can see the third building there on the right-hand side, in a state of disrepair with the roof partially open. Again, that third building in the foreground, and you can see the screening there behind it that separates it from number 1, the Orchard. This is the access driveway to number 1, the Orchard, I think also to number 2, the Orchard. Again, there is some screening on that driveway. This is from within the site, looking back towards the 2 main buildings. And just to show you a few of the houses in the surround, this is looking from the Reading Road onto Great Sheldon's Coppice. And yeah, the house on the left there, probably a similar height to the proposal. And this is an example of a house across the road, effectively just behind that previous shot. Again, showing you an example of some of the properties in the area. This is a comparison of the proposal on the right, which you've seen before, and on the left is the extant permission on the site, and that is key to this application. So the extant permission is for the conversion of the main building into 2 dwellings, the use of the second building as a garage and the third building as a bicycle store. And that is extant, that permission, that could be implemented. And the key issue with this application is whether the current proposal is an improvement on that extant permission. So the key considerations, obviously we're getting 2 houses. They would be self and custom build, which adds a little bit of extra weight. There would be an improvement in character and visual amenity terms. The site is a bit of a mess at the moment. And the dwelling for which we got full plans is a reasonable design. Key issue is flood risk. So we're adjacent to a main river. It is on the floodplain. There is policy conflict in the sense that the sequential test has not been undertaken. The exception test, which flows from that, is failed by default. And there would be a loss of floodplain storage. But that has to be set against the fallback position. So the previous scheme is extant, could be built out. There's no impediment to that. It does therefore amount to a material consideration. So it's entirely legitimate to take that into account. And the proposed scheme, the scheme we have before us now, is an improvement. It has a higher finished floor level than the extant consent. And due to the voids, there would be a less of a loss of floodplain storage. So in flood risk terms, the current proposal is an improvement. And because of that, the balance weighs in favour here. So usually, or the law says that we have to decide applications in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. In this case, they do indicate otherwise. And so we are recommending that we depart from the plan in order to approve the application. Just a small update, the unilateral undertaking that is referenced in the recommendations on the report has now been completed. It secures the heads of terms that were listed in the report. So effectively, that means that recommendation B on that report falls away. And we are recommending that permission is granted subject to the conditions set out and to that completed unilateral undertaking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Hopefully that just concords with the summary in your report, which is, and that's why it's come to committee, because it's a departure. And so it can't just be taken by officers as a grant. Any questions for the officers on his presentation? Councillor Dawn.
I've got 3 questions, please, Chairman. First of all, in terms of the unilateral undertaking, have some timescales been put in there for those payments to be made, perhaps related to the development process? And Mr. Berry will know very well that Wingate looms large in my mind, and indeed in my ward.
I don't know the depths of the S106. It's only signed today, wasn't it? Heads of terms.
Yeah, so it was signed today. They are securing third-party SANG, and that's already been secured from Hook Parish Council, and the SAM payment would be due before development commences. The applicant has indicated he's happy to pay that essentially right now.
That's very reassuring to hear. Thank you. Second one is boundary treatments. I didn't spot anything of boundary treatments because this is quite a sensitive site on the corner. It was seen by a lot of people. Did I just miss that?
Yeah, so we can add a condition for boundary treatments for the dwelling for which full permission is sought. For the outline dwelling, that would be dealt with at reserved matter stage.
Okay, as long as it's dealt with in a sensitive way, it does, and presumably the applicant is not present this evening, I don't believe, but he will, or they will obviously hear what we've had to say. The third one is a slightly technical question. Given that the pipe that delivers water to that that open bit is matched by a pipe of the same diameter that leaves it, under what conditions would it actually cause a flood?
Well, I think because it's a river, you would have the water would flow into it if you have a lot of rainfall. I mean, I'm not a flood expert myself, but in an extreme scenario, the modelling suggests that the entire site would be underwater.
It would have to come from somewhere else, because if it arrives in one pipe at one flow rate and leaves at the same flow rate, there's no change, is there? I'm just sort of really reinforcing the point that there's no real flood risk there that I can see that is practical from those structures.
That actually assumes that the Reading Road South isn't a foot underwater as well. It may very well be if it can't get through the culvert.
I mean, although we didn't have the modelling for this application, there was a previous scheme in 2022, modelling was undertaken, and that did show the risk that we got, basically.
Any other questions for the officer before we move to public speaking? No, I believe we have a public speaker here, Mr. Stevens. If you could just come to the podium there. And with all public speakers, we give you 3 minutes when you've got yourself settled and happy with it. Our officer will give. It's not an electric shock machine. It's a coloured buzzer. And when you get to 3 minutes, I'll just remind you to wind up. Okay. And if you'd stayed where you are afterwards, because I'm sure some of the members might have questions for you, if you'd be so kind. So when you're ready, just press the button in front of you, and then members online can hear you as well. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Zach Stevens, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants in support of the officer's recommendation. The principal matter before you this evening is flood risk. The Environmental Agency's initial response identifies several technical concerns, including finished floor levels, flood storage, and possible effects of the development on surrounding land. Those matters were addressed through a revised flood risk assessment, further calculations from the chartered civil engineer, and amendments to the flood void design. The Environmental Agency subsequently removed its technical objection. Therefore, only one environmental objection remains. This is what the agency itself describes as an objection in principle, arising from the site's classification as flood zone 3B. That distinction is important. The Environmental Agency is no longer objecting to the proposed finished floor levels or the detailed design of the flood voids, aspects that were addressed and accepted. The residential accommodation has been raised above the modelled designed flood level to a level which enables the Environmental Agency to remove its technical objection. Beneath the accommodation is a purpose-designed flood void which allows water to enter, pass through, occupy the space below the building. This water demonstrates the floodplain. When a solid object is placed into the water, it displaces the water and causes the red level to rise. The proposed building does not operate as a solid obstruction. The accommodation is raised above the open void, allowing floodwater to flow through the space beneath it rather than simply being forced elsewhere. This is only a simple visual illustration. The detailed evidence is contained within the flood risk assessment. The open flood void beneath the raised accommodation provides additional flood storage. The civil engineer concludes that once this underfloor storage is taken into account, the proposal provides significantly greater flood storage area than the permitted fallback proposal and reduces the flood risk to third parties. The fallback position is a genuine material consideration. This existing consent for the existing packing shed to be converted into residential use. That conversion could proceed without the same purpose-designed flood void beneath the residential accommodation. Comparison, therefore, is not between this proposal and an untouched floodplain. It is between this carefully engineered proposal and a residential conversion, which can already be lawfully proceeded, though it would have less flood protection. The council's own drainage officer acknowledges that the current proposal improves upon the previous scheme and appears to reduce the potential flood risk. Finally, the proposal represents a significant visual betterment. The site is currently an eyesore, occupied by a collection of unattractive buildings which do not sit comfortably within the established grain of the development along Reading Road. The proposal replaces those buildings with a thoughtfully designed custom-built homes. The architecture adds interest, creates a high-quality frontage, and responds positively to the established pattern and grain of development. The proposal therefore represents a high-quality design and a better flood risk outcome than the lawful fallback position already approved.
Mr. Stevens, if you could quickly wind up now, please.
I respectfully ask the members to support the case officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right. Any questions to Mr. Stevens from the committee? I think it's quite clear on what the issue is for us to debate. No, thank you.
I'd just like to answer Chris's question from before about the boundary treatment.
I think it would help you, yeah.
So the site plans propose to have laurel hedging planted along the boundary of Reading Road, so to have a soft boundary there.
And would that be maintained at a particular height so it doesn't encroach onto the pavements and so on?
That could well be done by condition, but the majority of it is behind the Dorchester, the stream, so much of it won't affect the actual footpath. But yes, that could be sought after under condition.
Mr. Berry, you've got something to add to that.
Chair, just before you go into debate, just to say we have realised that the landscaping for the outline element is in there, but we haven't asked for a landscaping scheme for the detailed element. So we'd like to propose.
Or we could secure that hedging.
Yeah. So we'd just like to propose a condition that secures the hedging and the landscaping, as well as the boundary treatment, as well as the amendment that Mr. Kidge has referred to, which is confirming we don't need the recommendation B element. Thank you.
Okay. So do we have to move an amendment to the recommendation, or do we have to just make sure we read out what the condition will be that we add to the planning consent if we decide to grant?
If you decide to go that way, we'll give you some words.
Fine. That's part of the new process. We have to be very clear on what we're doing when we go through this. Right. This must be in your ward as you live so close to it. Councillor Smith, you want to just kick us off, and then if we need to debate it, we will.
Certainly. Yeah, this derelict site has had numerous applications for residential development since 2016. These have been refused either as delegated decisions or at this committee. There have been appeals against the refusals, with the refusals upheld by a planning inspector. The last time it came to committee, the committee endorsed the officer refusal by a tight margin. The main issue in play was the flooding exception test, which had not been satisfied, and members agreed that with the officers that it was important to retain the power of that exception test for larger sites rather than weaken that power with a variation on it for those two properties. There have been successful applications on this site for non-residential development because those are not subject to the flooding exception test, and because there had been prior non-residential development on that site, as you can see. Because there'd been prior development on the site, there's also a permission in principle to relocate upon the existing foundations, as you've heard, without having to apply the exception test, though those would not be great properties for occupiers due to the shape, basically, the layout. So we now have a different planning balance with the lack of a 5-year land supply, but also, as you've heard, the development has been improved with respect to flood resilience and avoidance of displacement of floodwater due to the development. So I'm interested to hear what other members think about the new proposal and the officer's assessment, and I reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. Would anybody like to kick us off on this? Councillor Dawn?
First of all, I'd like to ask Mr. Stevens to turn his microphone off, please.
Oh, right.
Otherwise the system doesn't work
otherwise get an echo.
quite so well, does it? No, I think generally, given the points that are made in the report, I think the flood risk, frankly, has been a little overstated previously, but this clearly deals with it absolutely. And so I basically seen nothing there that would stop it moving forward, particularly given that there's a fallback position. The additional amendments we've just mentioned certainly been very useful to add into that proposal.
So boundary and landscaping treatments.
Yes.
Okay. Just from my own point of view, I think this is an improvement on the extent of planning permission, and I'm certainly going to actually grant this one. Other members in the debate? Anybody else got any comments, or are we happy with what we've heard? Councillor Makepeace-Brown.
I'm not quite sure if it's the right time, but for officers, for working hours on this site, this is a massive bugbear for me personally and as a councillor. For areas that are being developed in high residential areas, I have an issue with early start times. So what are the start times proposed for the site works?
There's no condition at the moment controlling hours. I think it would be a little difficult in this case, given the low sort of scale of the scheme and the fact it's a self-build, meaning that if people want to work on it as well as hold down a day job, it might be difficult to do it in sort of a 9 to 5 time frame. So as it stands, there's no condition on their controlling hours.
Are we able to put an earlier start time of not before 8 o'clock? Is that something that we can condition, not starting before 8, as it is in a residential area?
Yeah, we can add a condition to that effect if the committee thinks it's reasonable. Yeah.
Councillor Dawn.
I would very much support Councillor Makepeace Brown's point. The status of the person doing the building works, whether they do it themselves or employ subcontractors or whatever, is not the matter for this committee. But the imposition on the neighbours very much is. And so we should very much set earliest start and latest work times for this, as we would do for any other site.
I'd like to just challenge that. I'm not sure we put in working times when we're doing householder applications, when we're doing large scale single house builds, or they're not in our standard conditions.
Beg to differ, Chairman. I'm absolutely sure I've seen them in most of the things I've seen go through here.
Chair, well, we don't routinely do it, but clearly if members feel strongly in this case, then there is an option open to us, and we just need to know from you what you think is the reasonable time frame to impose.
Councillor Smith.
If we were minded to do something like that, would it be sensible to make it construction as opposed to other works that might be interior? So, or even if you can say things that would actually be disturbing of others, that they'd start after a certain time, rather than just generally no work on the site. Because as we said, it's self-build, custom build, then it may be that, you could do things at any time of the day and night, just, as long as they don't disturb and, on the actual main noisy construction.
Okay. I don't have a great have we got something stopped?
There is the stop condition is it really does talk about noise audible at the site boundary, so it doesn't prevent someone from painting or plastering or so basically it allows work to continue, but the noise generating activity, the power tools and the hammering is restricted. So that's the sort of general routine approach to this. We do have a model, but I don't know if we put it right to hand at the moment.
Not before me.
So we can put that on. I think the main thing is to know the hours, which, I mean, generally speaking, we have put on 8 o'clock. Sometimes it's 7:30. And we would also preclude bank holidays and Sundays. And on Saturdays, it would be 8 till 1. And in the evening, I can't remember, is it 6:30? 6, yeah.
Okay, but that would only be for noise issues, not actual
So
on site.
No work shall take place on site, which is audible from the site at the site boundary.
Right, okay, Councillor Makepeace Brown.
Right, I'd be happy for it to be stated as a start for 8 o'clock any day, and a Monday to Friday stop at 6, and a Saturday stop at 1, and bank holidays and Sunday nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
Do we have that condition that we can share with the members of the committee, or do we have to
So it would go
pause the meeting?
something like no works audible at the site boundary shall take place between the hours of 8 till 6, Mondays to Fridays inclusive, 8 till 1 Saturdays, and not at all on Sundays and bank holidays.
Okay, members happy with that? Have you got that in your brain so that when we take the vote, we understand what that is? And also the other condition, would you like to read that one out as well, please?
So the wording I've got for that is the dwelling for which full details have been provided shall not be occupied until the laurel hedging shown on the approved plans has been planted. If the hedging dies or becomes diseased within a period of 5 years after planting, it shall be replaced to the satisfaction of the local planning authority.
Members comfortable with that wording? Okay. Anybody else want to debate, or shall we leave it to Councillor Smith to decide how we would like to move?
Yeah, I think the site is crying out for development. I think you can see in the images, it's a prominent site on the corner of two residential roads. Although technically in a flood zone, this spot has never been known to flood. Even when there's been significant flooding nearby in recent years, this area hasn't flooded. Houses to the north of the plot were actually built on land of the same flood zone rating when there were different planning considerations, and they've not flooded since construction decades ago. The new planning balance alone would tend to support the proposals, but with the improvements to the flood resilience and protection against flood displacement, I see no reason to refuse the application. So I'd be moving that we accept the grant.
Okay, well, perhaps you second me. I'll move it as listed with those two additional conditions. I'll move that for grant. Okay, do we have to, we don't have to take a recorded vote, do we? No. So I will ask can I look for a seconder? Councillor Smith, all those in favour of grant? That's all of those present. Thank you, Councillor Forster. And myself, so that was carried unanimously. If you'd like to announce the...
So that means the application has been approved with those modifications, the additional condition about boundary treatment and landscaping. And as the unilateral undertaking has been completed, that also is now satisfied. So, and the working hours. So hopefully that's clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevens. You can stay here or go to a local hostelry and prepare. Thank you. Mr. Forster.
Chair, I understand Councillor Dawn gave my apologies.
Yes,
I'd like to give them personally. It took me 2.25 hours to get home. It normally takes an hour. Thank you, SWR, for actually getting me home eventually.
But I'm sure, did you have to get on a bus? But so no such adventure then. Okay. All right. Right, we'll move on to the next application, which is 68 Albany Road. This is again your site, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
If you would do a presentation for all of us present, thank you.
Item 7, 68 Albany Road in Fleet. This proposal seeks the demolition of the existing dwelling and the erection of 9 new dwellings with an access road and associated works. This is an outline scheme and we are considering access and layout tonight. So the layout as shown on the drawings would broadly be fixed, but the details would be reserved. This is the site edged in red on the corner of Albany Road to the north and Albany Close to the east. It does appear to be one of the more or less original Victorian plots, very large compared to its neighbours, with the original Victorian house at the north side fronting the road. There's another Victorian house to the west, and also I think the next couple are Victorian houses, but you can see that the backland effectively has already been developed in those cases. So the Buchanan Mews scheme was approved between 10 and 15 years ago. And even further along, there's an example you can see just on the left-hand side there, the end of a sort of an access road, a backland development. So I think most of the rest of the road has seen this sort of development. This site is possibly one of the only remaining original plots on the road. So this is the same view from the Google aerial shot. The site is very overgrown, doesn't seem to have been maintained. The house doesn't seem to have been lived in for a considerable period of time. This is the proposed site plan. So as before, the layout that you see here would essentially be fixed, but the detailed design of the houses and the landscaping, etc., would be held for reserved matters. The access they are seeking consent for On the left-hand side there, you can just about make out a blue dashed line upwards and downwards from the access. That is the visibility display, which has been approved by the Highway Authority at Hampshire County Council. So the dashed red line on the left-hand side is the existing property, which would be demolished. And the new dwellings are colour-coded as regards to size. So the blue coloured dwellings are 2 bedrooms, and the yellow 3 bedrooms, and the green 4 bedrooms. Sort of between the 2 blocks of blue, you can just about see a little blue circle and then red outline a bit beyond that. That is one of the main trees within the site. I'll come on to that. That would be removed. Broadly, all the dashed red you can see on that drawing would be removed trees. Inevitably, there's quite a few of those to be removed. All of the significant ones would be retained, with the exception of that large one that is currently between the 2 blue patches there. I'll come on to that. Again, just the same drawing with some more lifelike colours, showing where the extent of the access road would be, and clearly they're showing you the dwellings and how they would be laid out. This is a tracking drawing showing access for a refuse slurry. Again, this has gone to Hampshire County Council and they're happy with the access for that. The waste team, the joint waste team, has pointed out that the road would need to be adopted for the lorry to go down it, I think due to a weight consideration. So we are proposing a condition that would secure that adoption. Photographs. This is Albany Close, or looking towards Albany Close from Albany Road. On the right-hand side, the trees, and behind those trees is the site. And just panning to the right, trees in the foreground, the site is behind those trees. You can just see on the right-hand side there the sort of the beginning of the boundary treatment, the existing boundary treatment for the site. So as I said, the site is overgrown at the moment. You can see the condition of the boundary wall and the planting. Again, just panning along. The frontage is very heavily treed, so the dwelling is not clearly visible from all angles. So from here, you can just about see the dwelling through those trees. This is from the other side. So the dwelling half hidden behind the trees, and then the dwelling on the right-hand side is number 66. So yeah, about half of number 68 completely obscured there. And that is a shot just of the facade of number 68, showing it to be boarded up. As I say, I don't think it's been lived in for some time. So the considerations here in favour of the application is the 8 net additional dwellings that would be provided in the context of the council's current housing shortfall, 5-year housing land supply. There would be some biodiversity net gain. It would be off-site in this case, but nonetheless it is a gain and it does count in favour. Set against that, we would be losing that Victorian house, which is essentially protected by one of the policies in the Fleet Neighbourhood Plan, which refers to an urban character study that was carried out some years before. Within that character study, it suggests that Victorian and Edwardian houses in these locations should be retained. So there will be some conflict with that policy. The Victorian house is quite attractive, seems to have some character to it. So that is harmful in itself. There would be some conflict with the local grain, mainly down to the fact that there is parking proposed in blocks, partially along the site. And there's a lack of front gardens there, which you do see in some of the surrounds. So there's some conflict there with the local grain. So overall, there is some harm to local character. There is a very minor parking shortfall, and that is because there's 2 single garages for the 4-bed houses. Our SPD parking document discounts single garages. So it's a technical conflict with that. We haven't ascribed any harm to that because it is in a sustainable location towards the centre of Fleet. Trees. So that's a large tree that I was pointing out on the site plan. That is a protected purple beech tree. And there was quite a bit of back and forth on that because we initially sought to resist the loss of that tree. However, unfortunately, it has been proven to be decaying due to a fungal infection on the stem. And our tree officer has accepted that. It does not have much of a further life expectancy. So we feel we can't resist the loss of that tree. All of the other protected trees on the site and all of the high category A and B trees on the site would be retained. And there are tree protection measures to that effect put forward, which would be secured by condition. So this one is finely balanced. We've given broadly equivalent weight to the 8 additional dwellings and the character harm counting against that. So it is finely balanced. However, we are in the tilted balance scenario, and the tilted balance essentially says that permission should be granted unless the harms significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. And because in this case we consider the harms and the benefits to be finely balanced, the tilted balance is indicating that we grant permission. So that is the recommendation, subject to the conditions set out in the report and to a Section 106 agreement, which would secure the Thames Basin heath mitigations and the off-site biodiversity net gain. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, right. Any questions to the officer? Yes, you first, and then Councillor.
A couple of questions, technical ones really, as a newcomer, things that I'm not quite sure what they mean. You use the phrase a reserved matter. I read that as well, and I put it as a point to query. But what exactly does that mean?
So this is an application for outline permission, which sort of establishes the principle of the development at the site, and then various matters are reserved for further consideration. So the appearance of the houses, the landscaping of the site, and the scale of the houses would all be reserved, and the applicant would have to put in a further application so we could consider those details, and we still have got discretion over those details, so we can approve or refuse them at a later date.
Right, well, that was the first one. And then you mentioned the SPD. What's an SPD?
Sorry. So an SPD is a supplementary planning document. It sort of sits below a development plan document like the Hart Local Plan. So the Hart Local Plan has policies in it which carry more weight than the suggestions, if you like, in a supplementary planning document. But they can often flesh out what is in the policies. They provide the further detail.
And again, could you just run past me? I didn't understand the reason why with a 4-bed house you were happy to concede, or it seemed like to me that you were indicating you should concede a single garage.
Yeah, so the single garages are shown for the 4-bed houses. They would have 2 parking spaces sort of outside the garages. They would also have a single garage. And so those 2 single garages, according to our SPD, do not count as parking spaces. So effectively, we are 2 parking spaces short on those houses. And the SPD says that because the size of a single garage typically means it's used for storage. So it effectively only counts double garages, even then only as a single space. So we're effectively 2 spaces short. Now, we haven't ascribed harm to that because of the sustainability of the location. You could walk into Fleet Town Centre from this location.
Thank you very much. And I've got one other question, if I'm allowed.
Yes.
The biodiversity net gain off-site for the vegetation and trees that are lost. How does that work?
So that is presumably because they're having to take out a certain number of trees and so on.
But how do you know it's an off-site gain?
So they would have to buy credits for off-site biodiversity gain provision. So there are other sites And the committee may recall in May we discussed an application proposal at Cross Farm, Crookham Village, for a SANG, and that would also, or did also, have as part of it a biodiversity gain provision. So effectively, this site, if it gets approval, they could even buy some credits from that other site. So across the country, there are various sites that are set aside for that. So they would just have to purchase effectively some credit on another site.
So it's not done on a fixed rate. I was looking what SAM was, and that looks like it's a local scale depending on the size of the development. Is that an equivalent, or is that different?
No, it's so potentially they would be buying those credits from a third party provider, and the cost, I imagine, is negotiated between the two. That is distinct from a statutory credit. So if all else fails, they could even go to the government and buy a statutory credit. That's a different thing. In this case, they've indicated they would go off-site and go to a third party and buy a credit from a third party site. That's not set in stone, however, because it still has to be negotiated as part of the Section 106 agreement. And if they did want to revert to statutory credits, and provided they had good reason for that, then they could do that.
Okay.
Any other questions for the officer? Councillor Still second, Councillor Forster first, and Councillor Smith.
Chair, can I ask if the diagram showing the road, proposed road, can be put up, because I've got a couple of questions relating to that. Thank you.
That one or the previous one?
That one is fine. Either.
Yeah.
Is there a footpath along the edge of that road through the entire estate?
So this is showing a footpath. You can see there just in front of the visitor spaces. So there looks like a footpath there.
And does that run up the entirety of the road?
Yes, it looks like it does, more or less.
And what is the width of the road proposed?
I haven't measured it, but we would be conditioning an adoptable standard, so it would have to meet that standard.
My question particularly relates to the waste lorry, because if I heard you correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you said that the waste lorry would be driving up that road, and that would only be okay for the district if the road was adopted. Was that correct?
Yeah, so our joint waste team have said that the lorry would only enter the road if the road was adopted. Yeah.
Okay, so it would need a Section 38 agreement.
I imagine so.
With a supporting, well, it would need a 38 agreement for the road to be adopted. So that could be a condition of it.
So we are proposing a condition to say that the road would have to be adopted. We are not specifying the precise legal mechanism because that's left to the applicant and the highway authority.
Okay, my concern, and tell me how you would accommodate this, would be if the site was built as proposed and the road was not adopted for any reason, because perhaps the developer didn't bring it up to the required standard for adoption or any other reason. In that circumstance, would the waste collection vehicle need to collect bins from the end of the road because it wouldn't enter it?
That is what the joint waste team is saying. That is why we put the condition on there. And if they were unable to comply with that condition, then I imagine they would have to come back to us and seek to vary it, and we would have to consider that. Let me just remind myself of the wording of that condition. So we would not be permitting the occupation of the dwellings until the road was adopted. If it transpired that the road could not be adopted, the condition would prevent occupation unless it were changed. So I imagine in those circumstances, the developer would have to come back to us and present their case as to why the road could not be adopted, and would have to present a case as to how they would consider waste collection would be carried out.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because that would require then a bin store that was suitable for 9 houses and however many bins per house,
So
4 bins per house.
I think they would have to come forward with an alternative proposal that would acknowledge and accommodate the fact that the lorry could not get to the end of the road, and therefore how would the house at the end of the road dispose of their bins effectively? Yeah.
Secondly, is there a condition on cycle storage? Because if we're going below the target number of parking spaces, is there a condition for each of the houses? Because you may not know who's not going to have parking, to have cycle storage on every single one of those.
So no, there's no condition for cycle storage. I mean, those details, it's whether those details could be secured now under layout, because remember, we're only considering layout at this stage, and appearance, landscaping, and scale would be reserved. So those, in fact, no, there is. Let's just go back. Do you see the dark black sort of patches behind the dwellings there? That is denoting cycle storage.
That's behind each of the houses. I can't see from here, sorry.
Yeah, so there's a dark, sort of where the parking spaces are, typically behind the parking spaces, there's what you can probably just see is a dark black patch there. And just looking at that, that is where the proposed cycle parking would be. Yeah, so we could potentially condition that. We could amend condition 7, which is requiring that dwellings can't be occupied until the parking and turning areas are constructed. We could amend that to require that the cycle parking is made available.
Thank you. And my last point, in terms of access for waste collection vehicles, you've got a road with 2 fairly tight corners on it, which means the waste collection vehicle would have to drive in, but then have to reverse out through the entirety of that road? Or is there a turning area that has been analysed as sufficient for one of the Hart waste collection vehicles to actually turn around in the road?
This drawing, that's just an excerpt of that drawing. It does show that the vehicle could turn in that. So the turning area on here at the right-hand side, the end there, and they have tracked it to show that it could turn, and so it would be able to exit in forward gear.
Okay, thank you. And last but by no means least, and sorry for so many questions, because of the width of the road and the turning area, is it proposed that there would be a TRO in place that prevents any parking on any of the street? Otherwise, it would restrict access for emergency vehicles, let alone the waste collection vehicle, because I would suggest that a TRO applying no loading as well to the entirety of the street would be appropriate.
So that is not part of the conditions at the moment. Potentially, I think we could add that to the legal agreement. I'm not sure a condition would suffice to that. Yeah. So we would have to add it to the legal agreement.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dawn.
Thank you. I will struggle with outline applications because there's a lot of the detail that is so germane to the practicality and indeed the acceptability of sites. In terms of the character, although you're losing a very rundown Victorian house, how do you decide that you have a loss of character given that you don't have a new character to compare it with? Because you could put some very nice houses on there and say, actually, that's an improvement.
Yes, you could. And I think I did acknowledge that in my report, where I said that you could achieve a good design there and that would lessen the harm. I think because the existing house is sort of specified in one of the policies, we would say that there is some residual harm nonetheless. But yes, absolutely, there could be a superb design there. And I think in that case, the harm would be minimal.
Thank you. The same question I had earlier about the SANG and SAM and the S106 agreements. Will those be signed and agreed and ensure that the payments occur before development starts?
Yes.
Thank you.
That was a very good answer. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I didn't see a report from Heritage Officer. Was the Heritage Officer consulted on the application with respect to the existing property on site?
No, there was no consultation with the Heritage Officer. Although the house is an old one and has a good deal of character, it is not either statutorily or locally listed, and is not listed under Policy 12 of the Fleet Neighbourhood Plan as one of those properties they were looking to protect.
I think in one of the submissions I saw, it was actually used as an illustration in the Fleet neighbourhood plan as to the character of houses. So it was actually the one photographed. So I'm not sure you can say that it wasn't considered to be significant. I was there today and I did see the existing house. Yes, it's in a very poor state of repair, but it does seem to be watertight, and the roof's pretty good and the walls are pretty good. So it's a shame to lose it. I know the prior application had retained that dwelling, but obviously this one doesn't. We can't condition that they keep it now. Unfortunately, we just have to consider what's in front of us. But I'd nice to see them retain it if they could.
Yes, just to come back on that, I think the excerpt in the representation was an excerpt from policy 12, but policy 12 goes on to specify, I think it's appendix 3 of the plan. It lists the properties that it applies to, and this isn't one of them.
Okay, any other questions for the officer before we get to public speaking? Councillor Meekers, yes.
Just back to the adopted road bit. I am not reading that condition that the road has to be adopted. I'm reading it that it has to be to an adoptable standard, and I believe there's a difference in that.
Yeah, that's correct. So we could amend that condition, but I think for the purposes of the, sorry, Mark, you want to?
Sorry, I don't wish to contradict, but yeah, I think that would also have to be in the legal agreement, because it would put the hands, it would put whether the condition could be complied with in the hands of a third party, which is the county council in this case. So my view on that is that the mechanism, if we say it must be adopted, not just built to an adoptable standard, it would have to go into the legal agreement along with the TRO. It's a similar kind of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'll just warn members that if you think of the experience of adoption of roads, say in Elvertham Heath, it will take more than a decade. QEB, more than a decade. So if you put that in to the legal agreement, you are putting it in the hands of Hampshire County Council.
So I'm not fussed about it being actually adopted. I just would like it to be clear that this is not saying it's got to be adopted. This is saying we require it to be to an adoptable standard in order for our refuse vehicles to use it. That's the main thing. We don't care whether this driveway, basically a driveway road, I don't believe we care if it is actually adopted. We just want our vehicles to be able to get in to serve the residents. So that's just the point I'm making.
And that is why the condition is ultimately there, because the joint waste team have pointed that out. Yeah, so that is what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
Mr. Forster.
Yeah, on that point, I think it is important, because if it's built to an adoptable standard, it can't have a TRO in place, which means parking can't be prohibited on it. And we're saying that our waste vehicles won't use it unless it's adopted or an adoptable standard. This is an area where we're very grey, and I think we need to be very exact.
So the joint waste team have said it has to be to an adoptable standard, hence the condition. If we want it to be adopted full stop, as Marcus said, I think we'd have to put that into the legal agreement. So it's a question of how far the committee wishes to go.
Okay. Just taking it. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Taking the example of Elvertham Heath or any other scheme that's not adopted, and I can think of a number, they are serviced by refuse vehicles. So our insurance arrangements and everything do allow developments that are not adopted but are built to an adoptable standard to be serviced, even though it may take many years for them ultimately to become adopted.
Okay. Councillor Forster. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Fact of the matter is, on Eltham Heath, where we do service unadopted roads, and we're 25 years into those not being yet adopted because they're still not up to the relevant standard. I'm not aware that any are cul-de-sacs. And that, to me, is the issue here, that you might have road that's built to an adoptable standard that doesn't have anywhere for at the end of the road for bins to be stored, yet our waste vehicles may not go out of it. And that's why I think if we're considering granting this, we need to make sure that either there is a bin store or that the conditions are in place to make sure that it is safe for vehicles to enter.
Okay, do you want to answer that, or shall we get the public speaking? We might get some clarity from the applicant on that. Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a number of speakers tonight. The first one is from the town council. I don't see. Oh, you're here, Bob. Sorry, Councillor Schofield. I didn't see you at the beginning of the meeting. You must have had your head down. I'm sorry. Pardon? Councillors don't sneak. Councillor Makepeace-Brown. They glide. Councillor Schofield, would you like to take the stand, please? Right. You know the process. Your 3 minutes, and then the red light comes on. So when you're ready, Councillor Schofield, just press the button on the microphone and you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. I can be fairly brief because most of my argument is covered in paragraphs 5 to 9 on page 32 of your papers. And fundamentally, it is the fact that the building in question that's come up is identified in the area characterisation study. I would just point out that it was Hart District Council that initiated the characterisation studies, and they were adopted by the Town Council. But in particular, in the area that we're interested in, South Fleet neighbourhood area, it specifically says the loss of the late Victorian and Edwardian houses in these areas should be resisted. Fleet has a short history compared with some of our neighbours. Don't have too much evidence of that history. If we lose yet another sign of it, once it's gone, it's gone. It's irreplaceable. Hart has a climate emergency, and demolishing a structure and rebuilding with new materials can release 30 to 50% more embodied carbon than adaptive reuse of the same structure. There's a significant environmental issue with demolishing a building. Adaptive reuse avoids the recovery question by keeping materials in place. Also, what is the first rule of waste? It's reuse. If this building is demolished, the most likely end to its life will be in landfill, the most damaging environmental solution can come up with. So if we were able to convince members that we could keep this property, which is identified specifically in those documents, it would become policy compliant, it would be environmentally friendly, and it would certainly make the whole development much more characterful, if that's a correct word, and the overall impact would be the loss of one property, a Hart, in achieving its housing numbers. My plea, therefore, is we support the thing in principle because there are not too many developments of small family homes, which we think is a good solution, but we certainly feel that by the retention of that one property, it would make the whole development much more acceptable and fit much better in the local character. I would like to ask one last question relevant to the recent discussion. We noted that the last document we saw on the planning site was a question, I believe it was from either Waste or Hampshire County Council, that the waste vehicle size that had been used to do the turning circles was not the latest vehicle being used for waste collection. Can it be confirmed if those turning circles were revisited with the appropriate vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. I think we can take your last point away. There are new vehicles in the waste stream, and we've got some more on order. What we can do is make sure that the swept path analysis at the Hammerhead uses the correct size.
Yes.
For the future, when we go to, if this is granted, there's another planning application. We can make sure absolutely certain it's the right size vehicle. Members have any questions for Councillor Schofield? No? Okay, thank you, Councillor Schofield. We also have, is it Mr. Yetman? Yep. Mr. Yetman, who is a resident, and you're speaking against the application. Yep. Again, same rules apply to all speakers. You've got 3 minutes from when you start to make your points to the committee. So when you're ready, if you just press the button on there when you're ready to speak, and the floor is yours. If it's one of the officers' diagrams, yes. Which one would you like to select? Keep going. Bit more up the road, bit more up the road. I think I know the one you mean. No,
Just a little.
no, we don't want to see the district council officers.
There's a glitch on the. Get there.
There we go.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members, for the opportunity to speak today against parts of this application. Although I will note, we as neighbours broadly welcome many parts of this application. So I speak obviously a resident of number 66 Albany Road, which is the house on the right, to share a pretty large border with number 68. And I agree, probably that site has potential for development. The thing that I and many neighbours have issue with is the demolition of the existing Victorian dwelling, which has come up quite a lot today. And I'll make the case that it is a substantial historical asset and contributes quite significantly to the local area. So anyone, and I'm sure you guys have all read History of Fleet, will know that the major development of the town started in the 1870s when Henry Brake acquired a large piece of land. This house and 8 other properties on Albany Road form a contiguous historic grouping that were part of that original development of Fleet, so built in the 10 years prior to him purchasing the land and then clearing it off heathland. So I think it forms quite an important part of kind of the emergence of Fleet as an urban centre and resident for many people. My argument is that to remove it is both unnecessary, given that the previous 2 applications, as we mentioned already, included the house, and would damage the street scene by removing what is an attractive house and removing it as part of that clump of nice Victorian houses, of which there's 8, from number 68 all the way down to 49. So those are part of a very early development of Fleet. Second, I'd like to make the point that the house is actually in quite good repair. Of course, it would need major renovation, probably the windows replacing, but the brickwork pointing is largely intact. The slate roof is largely intact. The guttering is largely intact. I know Peter, who's a neighbour, has performed a visual inspection and kind of came to the same conclusion. And as I said, the previous 2 applications included the house. So we don't see any reason why you couldn't maintain the rest of the application, but include this heritage asset. I also want to make the point that's been made before that this house very specifically is part of the Hart Urban Characterisation Study. And you can see the study even has an image of this particular house, making the claim that its removal will cause, or that the removal of Victorian Edwardian houses should be resisted. So I think that's quite a strong argument. And also, if you look at the Fleet neighbourhood plan, that this probably is a heritage asset that forms an important part of Fleet's early history in that initial development through to the town centre. It is clearly a nice house. It would have been very grand. I understand it used to host the Fleet Garden Society for decades because it has substantial mature gardens. And it's a very nice family home. And I have no reason to see why it couldn't, once renovated, become, again, a popular, attractive home. So thank you very much for the time to speak today. So I'll leave with the argument that it's an attractive home, it's an historic home, and we should do everything we can to preserve the unique character of Fleet and the history of Fleet for future generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yeatman. Any questions for the speaker? No? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Very clear. Absolutely understand where you're coming from. I think the committee do. Thank you. We now have a public speaker for speaking on behalf of the applicant, Mrs. Collins. Good evening, Mrs. Collins.
Good evening.
You've heard me say what the rules are. You understand, and when the red light comes on, I'll ask you to wind it up.
Thank you very much.
When you're ready, if you can just press the button when you're ready. Thank you.
I did have a speech prepared, but I won't read it because you don't want to hear me reiterate what's already been said here this evening. I think my time would probably better be spent going over some of the comments that have been raised and queries that have been raised. I have been involved with the site for about 12 years. I can be specific because I was invited to tender for the site when I was pregnant with my daughter, who turned 11 in May. So but the specific time frame. So I've been involved in the site for about for 11 and a half years. I was involved with the previous two applications, both of which didn't go any further. That was in relation to probate matters outside of planning control, and we just weren't able to proceed because of legal matters at that point in time. This application has now come forward because my clients are now able to proceed basically with developing the site, and you now have the scheme in front of you. I absolutely understand where everyone's coming from in terms of the property. I have seen it both inside and out, and I do accept externally it is very attractive. So I do have some sympathy with that issue. The one thing that hasn't been mentioned this evening is the state of the property internally. When I was first part of the site, so 11, 12 years ago, when I took a sort of walk through, I've done it several times, albeit not in the last couple of years, but 11 or 12 years ago, when you go into the property, I don't think, I'm obviously not a building surveyor, but it appears to be almost two buildings mashed together. So when you go in, the level changes throughout the property are all over the place. You're going up steps, down steps, and it felt very, rickety isn't a proper word, but its quality internally is quite poor. And I can only say that must have deteriorated over the unfortunate period of time that we found ourselves waiting for this application to be brought forward. I'm happy to answer any further questions if you have them on that. In terms of cycle spaces, I think that was one of the things that was mentioned. We're more than happy to accept a condition to secure cycle spaces. That's reasonably standard. As you can see from the plans, we did put cycle stores in the rear gardens for all the properties, so we can just, obviously we would bring forward something that was in accordance with the approved plan, but we can happy to accept a condition to that effect as well. The adoptable standards, the access road has been designed to adoptable standards. That's entirely the intention, even before we had the comments from Hampshire to say that it would need to be. In terms of the vehicle tracking, and this was the case 4 months ago, I don't know where Hart are in purchasing new vehicles, but when we did the initial tracking, we tracked it to the size of Hart refuse vehicles. Hampshire didn't like that. They wanted us to track to the standard vehicle that they seek to use, which is actually bigger. At that point in time, it may have changed, but it was actually bigger than the vehicle that Hart use. So it was tracked to the biggest refuse vehicle that exists, basically. So I would be confident that tracking remains, or that the space for that vehicle remains appropriate. But we, if you want a condition on that, again, happy to do that because we're confident that is this time.
Okay, right. The infamous red lights come on, but I'm sure we've got some questions. Can I start us off with one? We've heard about previous applications which retained the Victorian property. What was the overriding reason for this application not to retain that one property?
I can't speak for my client because obviously they've instructed us to propose something that with its removal. But on discussion, I understand it's one because of the content, the quality of the property. My clients are not developers; they are the owners of the site as it currently sits. It was their family members who passed away and left the site to them. So they are looking at maximising the use of the site as best as possible that they can. And it was felt, as well as the condition of the property, that if we are to get a developer on site to enable them to develop the site out, it gave more flexibility if that property was removed because of the significant constraints in terms of renovating or refurbishing the house.
Right. So just to be clear, it's at the moment, it's just an outline through the family and planning agent. It's not got a developer who would assess the site on what's best. Okay, that would help the members know where this is going. The questions for Mrs. Collins?
Can I just ask?
Councillor Butler first.
Sorry.
Is there anybody else with a hand up? Councillor Wild. Oh, questions first, and then you can introduce it, can't you?
No, it's a question for officers afterwards.
Okay, all right. Councillor Butler first.
Right, sorry, just thinking about the house, and you've obviously been in it. Yes, sorry, I can't see her on the speaker at the same time. You know, obviously today people like kind of open plan, larger rooms, etc. Is there the possibility of reconfiguring the inside and flattening the kind of ground floor? Do you think, from what you've seen, from your knowledge?
It would be difficult for me to comment, if I'm honest, because I'm not a building surveyor, I'm a mere planner. I just know that having gone into it, there's bedrooms off bathrooms, and you step up and you step down, and there's another bedroom off a bathroom, and there's a bedroom off a bedroom, and it's a real mishmash. And it's because I'm too short, I stand up.
I think we understand.
Yeah.
It would need considerable work inside that building to bring it up to modern standards. I think we can accept that.
And I think the reality is, if we were able to do it, it may be that what you get out of the site is it just reduces it even further. But again, that's my non-professional view on that.
Councillor Wildsmith, you wanted to ask the officers a question?
Yeah, just to confirm, we're obviously considering the application in front of us. We don't actually have the option to say we'll go for it with keeping the existing property.
No, we are either going to refuse or grant the existing or defer. But we don't.
Can I, Chair, may I just say,
Yeah.
I think in this sort of case, deferral is an option if members really think that the existing house should be retained, because it's one house for a house. You see what I mean? So there's one plot. But we are being told, and the advice to our officers is that they do not wish to retain the existing house. So the proposal before you is to demolish the existing house. So if you determine this application in front of you, that's what it is. But we could consider a deferral. It's not often I say that, because I think we should determine the case in front of us.
Yeah, I see Mr. Yetman with his hand up. We don't take public questions during the debate. I'm sorry. But I'm sure you have got knowledge, but I think that's for the, we've actually done the public speaking. I'm sorry. Any other questions from Mrs. Collins?
It was really just on that point to finish that off. Is it really 1 for 1? I thought it was 2 on that plot.
I think it's 1. Yes, 2 for 1.
Oh, sorry, 2 for 1. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misguided you. Yeah,
sorry. 2 for 1. Okay. All right, no other questions. Thank you, Mrs. Collins. Councillor Wildsmith, would you like to kick us off? Oh, that's a terrible pun.
Yeah.
20 minutes in.
Yeah, I think like 2 is probably a little bit strong. We're in one of those awkward positions on this one. Obviously, we've got a site which has been vacant and derelict, for want of a better word, now overgrown for a long period of time. We have thanks to Labour government, a housing supply issue, and we need more houses, which is obviously bringing the tilted balance into it, which says we should be approving it. And we know from an appeal point of view, we'd probably end up losing. However, we have then got the likes for neighbourhood plan, which we've had issues come through to us beforehand, and we fought back against because we ask our town and parish councils to make these plans, something comes along, and then we ignore what's in the plan. So I'm very, very torn. I think as regards to what the house looks like, and it's actually in a worse state now when the pictures up there. While I'm looking at today, it's actually more boarded up and more windows smashed. But and I think it's down to an individual choice if you like look at it. Obviously, if we look to the other side of the street, then we've got more modern houses, and we have the issue that actually you've got Buchanan Mews. You've then got virtually diagonally opposite. You've got another bad development as well. So we've got precedent in the road for doing a development like this. So I'm very torn. I'll leave it down to members to discuss further.
Okay. Councillor Quarterman.
I can only see one thing wrong with this proposal, and that is lack of retention of the historic building. Everything else looks fine. However, I think the loss of a historic building is significant harm. We've just had a development in Yateley where a historic building has been retained in a new development very successfully. Looks very attractive. And with that in mind, I would suggest that we should actually take the option that Mr. Berry has proposed of deferring, making it absolutely clear that we're in principle happy with the application on the understanding that at least the exterior shell or the substantial part of the existing Victorian house is retained as part of the development.
Mr. Dawn?
I think a very good point is being made. The retention of the old building here seems to be absolutely key to the neighbours, the neighbourhood plan, and indeed, there's good solid, sort of carbon balance arguments in there. I think the problem is that the applicant hasn't perhaps looked at all the options very carefully, because I can look at that and say, yes, if things are on a different level, you could convert it, say, into perhaps 4 flats. Interesting levels, nice small development, you get that done, you get the money turned over to then develop the rest of that site with something similar to what's being proposed. And to have a proper, well thought out development like that makes commercial sense, that makes planning sense, that retains some of those older buildings, I think would be the smartest way to go forward. However, having looked at the proposal that we've seen, I would also comment that I am concerned about some of the root protection zones in relation to the existing or the proposed new dwellings. I think some of those trees are far too close to those dwellings, and if I saw the condition that said you should do, hand dug protection and deep foundations of lintels and so on over the roots and so on, if you're doing that, then the house is too close to the tree. Full stop. And if it doesn't cause a problem at the time when the house is built, it certainly will do in 10 years' time. I know I've got 2 of them. So going on a little bit further as well, the parking arrangements, I am always very sensitive if there is not enough parking. Because what happens is people park anywhere they can, because everybody has 2 or 3 cars, and that will then create a problem for access. And Councillor Forster was obviously probing clearly on the matter of the bin lorry being able to get in and out. And unless there's some level of control in that parking, or at least encouragement to not park on the roads, they're going to have a problem. And it's going to be one of these developments that we consent, and then it gives the residents who move in there years of grief and harm. So I think we need to be stronger in terms of having the road adopted, and there's probably a far better design in there. So I would support Mr. Berry's suggestion that it is deferred and people perhaps have a closer look at the other options.
Okay, we can defer it for a reason, but I think we'll be very unwise to defer it come back with a plan that retains that building and then bring up additional issues to say, well, we're not happy with it having 8 houses, we only want 6 on it, or we want flats, or whatever. So I think we have to be very clear that we're deferring for the reasons we defer, to give the applicant the best chance of coming back with a scheme which is not so finely balanced as the officers have said. Councillor Makepeace-Brown, then Councillor Wildsmith.
So are we able to ask the planner whether her client would be open to considering this application further? Because my concern, and I'm not a fan of deferring either. I believe we should one way or the other on these things. But having listened to the argument from Fleet Town Council and from the neighbouring resident, I do think that that building is substantially valuable to the area. So if we defer, does the applicant have the chance to take us to appeal on non-determination, or does that change that?
I think that's a question for the officers.
Yeah, Chair. Technically, they could. They've given us an extension of time to the end of this week, but after that, they could appeal against non-determination unless they give us a further extension. I think, if we're going for deferral, we need to be very clear on what it is. One way of doing it is to put the motion to approve and see if that falls, and then it's the choice really between refusal or deferral. So at least if now, I'm not trying to steer you, because I just get the sense of where this is going possibly. If you do vote that you would not be minded to approve, that gives quite a strong message without actually refusing it. So I don't know whether that's something that meets with your favour. But either way, I think we need to give a very strong message to the applicant as to what it is we want to see. And I appreciate Councillor Dawn's raised a range of issues, but I think the principal one is the retention of the historic building. So, that's what I think we're seeking to achieve. Whether we can achieve any improvements in route protection zones or improvements to the width of a garage or anything like that to address other concerns, then obviously that could be achieved. But we need to be very clear as to what they've got to do to satisfy us if they were to, amend it.
Okay, I'm going to take the comments from Councillor Wildsmith next.
My comment purely was that I'd like to propose deferral basically for the loss of that, which is in conflict with MBE 9 Gen 1, 10 and 10A, and that would be purely our reason for deferral. Width of garage is irrelevant. It's an outline plan at the moment anyway, so it means nothing. Parking spaces, I think, were on a loss after looking at other ones there. So I just purely proposed deferral based on the loss of that property.
Okay, hang on. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we should refuse this application. I'm not too concerned about the retention of the existing building there, although a lot of people have expressed satisfaction that it should be. I am really concerned about parking. We've got a lot of situations in reasonably modern developments in Hartley Wintney where parking is a real issue. And whoever, if these are small dwellings, which they are, they're likely to be occupied by artisans, both with a car and with a van. And parking is just not acceptable. If we don't adhere to the parking standards that we've got, it will be chaos in there, visitors coming, and all those sorts of things. So I think we should refuse this on the basis that there's not enough parking, and give the opportunity to the applicant to go away, rethink, and consider all the considerations that have been expressed in this meeting today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Forster.
I agree with Councillor Southern. I think it's poor.
Right. Okay, Councillor Wildsmith, are you content that we move the motion to defer? But I think we need to take Mr. Berry's advice first of all, which was to.
You could put the motion to approve, so it's
Okay.
clear that members don't wish to approve, even though we've had most people's comments.
Okay, and I suspect it'd be a split vote, so we'll have to do that recorded. Okay.
For a point of understanding, if we put a motion to approve and it gets approved, it's approved, as opposed to if we put a motion to defer it, then we have a chance to take it back to the applicant. Is that what the options are?
Sorry, Chair, if you want to consider the recommendation and vote on that, then you have a choice as to whether to defer or to put refusal. So you've already got, I think, a proposal for deferral. But you could consider the recommendation in front of you first, and then that would give a very strong message, I think, to the applicant if it falls.
But if it falls, we have flatly refused it.
No, you've agreed not to approve it.
But if the majority of members vote to approve it, it's approved. Okay, right. Well, I will move the motion as listed on the order paper. I don't think there was any changes. Okay, which is to approve the application. And we're going to, because I suspect there will be a number of.
Can I suggest we might be able to do this one by show of hands for this particular recommendation, which you've moved?
Councillor Dawn.
Chairman, on a point of order, I think if you were moving to approval, we also discussed including some additional points in the legal agreement point.
Right.
There was the TRO, but we, in fact, Councillor Forster advised us we can't impose a TRO unless it is actually adopted. And I think we agreed that provided it was of adoptable standard, that it could be serviced for refuse lorries. Therefore, I think the proposed amendments to the legal agreement kind of fall by the wayside. I might be wrong, but that's where I thought we'd got to.
Can I just come in on that, actually? The Highway Authority haven't asked for either TRO or that the roads be adopted.
Yeah.
So I don't really think we can put it in a legal agreement because it's a third part. They haven't asked for it, and it's and they're third party to it, and they've not asked to be.
I'll second the motion.
Right. So, right, we've got the motion. We'll do it by a show of hands. If there's a debate, then we'll. Or do we have to
just state what we are voting for now? So this is a vote to
grant, to grant the application as listed on the order paper. Okay, all those in favour of grant? No. Oh, okay. All those against? Any abstentions?
I'm concerned that we're refusing this. We're not refusing. All right.
We're not
Please.
allowing approval.
We're in the middle of a
Don't
vote,
be
Councillor
aggressive.
Makepeace Brown. Do you understand the motion in front? It's to accept the application as listed.
This was recommendation.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
As you weren't listening, I will allow you to say, are you going to vote for it, against it, or wish to abstain?
Against.
Against. Right. Okay. Councillor Butler, I didn't see you raise your hand. Or do you want to abstain? Abstain. Okay. So the motion is lost.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. Right. Now we were looking at a separate motion.
Therefore,
Councillor Wildsmith is.
I'd like to propose that we defer this.
Sorry to interrupt, but since that wasn't a unanimous vote, does that not need to be recorded?
Yes.
Because we had an abstention, didn't we? Right. We'll have to go.
But I think we can do that, can't we? Because we know who the officer, who the member was that abstained.
Yeah.
So that's fine. That's recorded now.
we'll let the officers tick the boxes. See, I shouldn't have taken your suggestion, Councillor Winesmith, should I?
Therefore, I would like to propose that we defer this application due to the loss of Victorian House, which is in conflict with policies MBE 9, Gen 1, 10 and 10A.
And seconded by Councillor Quarterman. Right, now, are we going to have a go at a show of hands, or are we going to, right, all those in favour of deferring this application? Or any against? Right, we're going to have to do a recorded vote. There we go. Right, can you read out the names? And this is for deferment. No, deferral. Not deferment. That's like internment, isn't it?
Councillor Cockrell,
Against.
Councillor Dawn,
For.
Councillor Forster,
Against.
Councillor Hardy, Councillor Makepeace Brown,
For.
Councillor Oliver,
For.
Councillor Quarterman,
For.
Councillor Butler,
For.
Councillor Smith,
For.
Councillor Southern
Against.
and Councillor Wildsmith.
For.
That's 7 for and 4 against.
Or against, right. Okay, so that motion is carried. So the application is deferred. And we will leave it with the officers to talk to the applicant. I think, are you absolutely confident that you know why the committee has deferred?
Yes.
You don't want any more information from us? No. Okay, thank you. Right, okay.
I'll say one more thing. Sorry. I think it's not just that it's a single building, it's that it's a run of historic buildings. I think that's quite
Well,
important.
it's a setting. I think that's
thank you.
that's in the characterisation. So, right, I think that is the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.